Okay, hi everyone. Sorry for the kind of mess somehow. So I'm Olivier Sarrouy. I'm the tech lead of Pando. I'm going to talk about today, which is distributed VCS, like version tracking system, based on IPFS, Aragon, and Ethereum. So what's the goal of this project? Like the short-term goal is to provide a decentralized alternative to GitHub, and the long-term goal is to provide a decentralized alternative to Git. So let me explain you that a little. Basically, we started working on Pando 7 months ago, thanks to a grant nest from Aragon. And so our goal was, let's try to decentralize how software development works, you know. And we figured out that, do we need to base our product on Git? And we realized that Git, of course, there were lots of reasons to use Git, like everyone's using Git, basically. But also, Git is not that suited to decentralized workflow. For lots of reasons, some are technical, like the hash primitives Git rely on. Some are more political or organizational, let's say. Basically, Git is organized around this idea of maintainer. So if you want to decentralize the production workflow around Git, it's not that easy. For instance, this thing like pull requests, which are so important in the open source ecosystem right now, are not even a real part of Git. Actually, you can create pull requests with the Git CLI, but then you have to send the pull requests by mail, you know, so it's not really integrated. So at that time, we decided, okay, let's go for the long run, let's go for the long-term vision, and let's start developing our own version tracking system, which will be a real Web3 and Ethereum native VCS. But then, the more we were working on that, and the more the community started hearing about us, the more people came back to us saying, "Oh, this project is cool. If you can help us ditch GitHub, it's really great. But we can't leave Git like that. You know, we rely too much on Git. We have lots of tools relying on Git, so we can't leave Git just like that." So we took the decision to hear the community, and now we are working on 2 different branches, basically. One being a long-term branch where we are trying to experiment in building a real new VCS, which will not be Git and which will be Web3 native. But for the short term and to ease adoption of decentralization, we are also working on a version of Pando which is Git compatible and actually turned Pando into a remote protocol for Git repos. So you can keep on using your Git stuff and still have full decentralization. So what's the point about that? I told you it's to achieve as much decentralization as possible, both from a technical or architectural point of view. So how does it work? It's kind of simple in the end. Basically, each time you try to push a new version, you push your commit to a Pando remote repo, what happens is that we take all the files of your code base of the different commits you are pushing online, we upload it to IPFS, we pin it if you provide data pinning services, and at some point, of course, we'd like to rely on Filecoin to do so. Then we take all the Git objects, like your commits, trees, blobs, stuff like that, and we translate it into an IPLD tree. IPLD standing for interplanetary linked data. Basically, it's like a data format to store linked data over IPFS. And then we just take the IPLD hash of this root data set, like the last commit, the head, the hash of the head commit you want to push, and we send it to an Aragon DAO, being in charge of governing your repo, and we say this DAO, okay, that's the new head I want to push on your repo, do you accept it or not? And then it's up to the DAO to decide, with respect to the governance scheme it relies on, to accept or not this new head reference, okay? So what's the point about that? Well, basically it means that all Pando repo are fully distributed, both from a storage perspective, like everything's relying on IPFS, and once the pinning problem is going to be solved at the ecosystem level, then it's going to be really fully distributed, and all the business logic is enforced on the Ethereum blockchain. That's pretty cool because it means that, of course, you have no single point of failure, but also it means that you actually own your repo. Basically, your repo becomes a DAO on the Ethereum blockchain, so we, as the maker of the Pando protocol, have no rights whatsoever on your DAO. We can't touch your DAO. You don't need any token to use Pando. It's like public infrastructure protocol. So, well, you own your stuff. The other point about decentralization is maybe the most important one, actually. It's about political decentralization, you know, and how we try to solve the problem of maintainers, how we try to solve also the problem of open source sustainability, and we don't pretend we have a solution to actually solve this problem totally, but we are trying to help. Basically how Git works, we talked about it a little, there is this whole idea of maintainers. Either you own the push rights over a repo, and then you can do whatever you want, or you don't and you can't do anything, you know? Or you can use pull request if you use GitHub or GitLab or stuff like that. And this is a problem because actually there is no incentives for people to contribute to your repo, you know? No economic incentive, obviously, but even symbolic incentives, you end up, you know, just being one name in the list of everyone having contributed, and that's not that much, you know? What we are trying to do with Pando is to give contributors actual authority over the repo, both to offer them some reconnaissance, you know, on their work, but also to free the maintainers somehow and decentralize their own work, which often requires lots of time for which maintainers are not paid. So basically what's happened, so when you try to push something to a Pando repo, the tool kind of looks for if you have the push rights or not, because we can still allow maintainers to have push rights. But if you don't, which is going to be like the default use case, then your pull request is going to be forwarded to a decision-making application, basically, like a voting application. And everyone in your repo can vote to decide whether or not to merge this pull request into the code base. And the cool thing is that if your pull request is merged, then another vote is going to be initiated, another decision is going to be initiated about what is the value of this pull request, okay? And depending on the value people grant to your pull request, which has been merged, you're going to be rewarded with specific tokens, like ERC20 token called lineage tokens, to acknowledge your contribution to the repo. These tokens have no monetary values. They are not even meant to be transferable, actually. They are just there to acknowledge that you contributed up to that importance, to that value, to the overall work on the repo. So depending on what you've pushed is like a typo correction into a README, or you have brought brand new features to the repo. Of course, the number of tokens you get are not going to be the same. And the thing is that then you can actually organize a governance scheme around this contribution token, lineage token. So the next time someone push a pull request or open a pull request, you're going to be able to vote and to participate in the governance of your repo to decide whether or not to merge the pull request, how much, to which point should this pull request evaluated, so to which point I accept to dilute my own authority over the repo, stuff like that. So basically each time you contribute, you can earn authority in some way over the repo. This also means that if at some point your software gains an income for some reasons, then it's going to be super easy to split this income between all the contributors with respect to their authorship share into the repo. And it kind of helps solving the problem of open source sustainability, because then you have an economic incentives to contribute. But you can even go further. You can say, actually, why would I not grant some lineage tokens to the repo I've just forked, you know, to acknowledge I come from there? Or why not granting lineage token to my software dependencies? And actually, one of our long-term goals is to integrate more tightly with the Aragon package manager, which is an on-chain package manager that we are willing to work on to improve, to make it backward compatible with NPM and stuff like that, so that you can automatically grant lineage tokens to your software dependencies as declared on your Aragon package declaration file. And this is pretty cool because it means that, let's say we are building an open source library, you know, I don't have to wonder, okay, what's going to be my economic model? I can just leave it there for free. And if lots of people use it and people use projects using it and stuff like that, then if at some point one repo gains an income, then it's going to be shared, split between all the contributors and all the dependencies, and flow up the dependency tree so I can aggregate lots of value thanks to my work. So we hope that this can be some kind of beginning to help solving the problem of open source sustainability in some way. Now, the cool thing about that is that Pando rely on Aragon. I don't know if you guys all know Aragon. It's an open source framework to build modular DAOs, distributed governance, and stoppable organizations. And actually, when you use Pando, you have to spawn like a GitHub organization, you know, to manage your repos. And actually, this GitHub-like organization is not a GitHub organization, it's an Aragon DAO. And the cool thing with Aragon DAOs is that they are highly modular, so you can use whatever governance scheme you want. You can plug new governance scheme. You can plug new applications to enhance the power of your DAO and then the ability of what we are able to do into your repo. So for instance, you can plug new government scheme. For now, in the default template we are developing for Pondo, the governance scheme is basically a voting application. If you open a pull request, then it's going to be a voted application relying on this contribution token, and people are going to be able to vote to decide whether or not to merge the pull request. But if you feel like you want to use another governance scheme, there are lots of teams working onto Aragon DAO and Aragon application to bring new governance scheme at play. So for instance, there is a team working on forethinkers. And if you feel like it makes sense, you can use a forethinkers application to decide of what should be merged into your repo or not, or to decide to which value these contributions should be rewarded and stuff like that. The other cool stuff is that you can, beyond governance, you can plug any kind of application you want into your Aragon DAO. One of the things we are working on right now in parallel of Pondo, for instance, is a fundraising application, like a crowdfunding application somehow, but a more, let's say, complex one, based on bonding curve. So basically people can invest in your DAO, and if more and more people invest, the price of the bond, of the token you're going to buy, is going to raise, so you can expect small profits. So it's like crowdfunding, but with more economic incentives somehow. And so we are developing an application which allows you to easily install this app in your Aragon DAO and spawn a fundraising campaign very easily, and then your token holders, your investors, can decide to which pace people can withdraw funds, how fast you can use these funds, to what, for what purposes, and stuff like that. So it's like crowdfunding in just a click, you know, and decentralized crowdfunding in just a click. So yeah, this is something which is supposed to be shipped this summer, for instance. So it means that you can take your Pondo organization or Aragon organization, your Pondo repo, and just in a click spawn a crowdfunding campaign to help fund your work, basically. So now it's kind of demo time. So the demo I'm going to make is a small video of the Git-based version just to show you how easy to use, basically, how easy it is to use. So yeah, basically we are, yeah, you see something. So we are now in a repo, the Aragon JS repo, basically. So first thing to do, of course, you need a repository. This one is pretty straightforward. And then we have a Git extension. So when you call Git Pondo something, it's going to call a specific CLI tool. So you can configure Pondo, how it is supposed to connect to Ethereum, for instance. So we support both direct connection or Frame, which is a desktop level Ethereum signer, which integrates with your cold wallet stuff, like Ledger and all. So once Pondo is configured, you can just deploy a new Aragon organization with all the Pondo-related applications installed on chain. So it's just one command away. Well, now it's pretty quick because it's actually deploying on a test chain, of course. And then once you have your organization spawned, you can deploy new repos like you will do in a GitHub organization. So let's call this repo Aragon API. Let's just give it the name of the mother DAO. And yes, that's it. So now the last thing you have to do is to add this contract as a Git remote, you know. So we have a specific Git remote protocol. So it's super straightforward. You just do Git remote add as you are used to do. But except of passing an HTTPS URL, you pass a Pondo URL this way. And now you just use Git as you are used to do, you know, like nothing specific. So you can just stage your file, commit your stuff. And git push. So this is an example where I do own the push rights over the repo, so there is no pull requests open. So you just use your Git stuff as usual, and then we have this front end. So this is the front end of Aragon DAOs, with on the left you have all the list of all the implications installed in the DAO. And for now we have a basic front end which just allows you to browse through your branches and through your commits and actually browse through the code base. What we are working on right now is precisely improving a lot this front end to be able to handle the pull requests, to be able to diff on files and basically bring all the features you are used to on GitHub to easily see the difference between two versions, merge them easily, and stuff like that. So obviously there is still some work to do. We also had like kind of an inflection in the code base when we decided to offer a Git compatible version a couple of weeks, months ago. So the next stuff we are going to be working on is improving the Git remote helper, the front end, the UI, so that you can have something which is as much as GitHub as possible, you know, being able to diff stuff and rely on the same workflow you are used to. We intend to have a testnet release this spring. Actually, we just need to update the front end right now to make it really usable. So it should be released this spring. And we expect to have the mainnet release this summer, along with this fundraising called Apiary app we are working on. So you're going to be able to host your repo on chain, govern your repo on chain through your Aragon DAO, and just from a click, just raise or start a fundraising campaign from this front end you've just seen. The long-term plan is to offer more, let's say, project management tool. So a decentralized issue system, which is not that easy to spawn because of the pinning problem, as always. And also, we are going to work hard to integrate with another team working on Aragon project, which is called Autark, which is developing huge, let's say, tools for team management and project management. For example, being able to set bounties, being able to set roadmaps, stuff like that, reward people for their work, stuff like that. So the idea being to bring and to integrate as tightly as possible with project management tools, totally decentralized, so that we can actually provide with a real alternative and decentralized alternative to GitHub as soon as possible. That's it. Thanks a lot. I think we have time for a couple of questions, if there are some. Yeah, sure. So you have a GitHub repo. Sorry about that. But, so you have a GitHub repo you can you can actually clone and run locally. So everything's working. Like just take the dev branch, fork from the dev branch. It's the default branch right now because the master branch is the old standalone non-Git related version. So you can clone it locally and start playing with it. Yeah, development is going pretty fast right now. So maybe some stuff can break at some point. But yeah, you can already play with it locally. You can. I'm going to put all the instructions in README also to browse, to spawn the front end, the Aragon front end, stuff like that, because no, it's not explained in the README, but it's going to be explained soon. So yeah, you can already play on it, and you can also, you can even deploy to testnet, not Ganache, but Rinkeby if you want. It's working, so yeah, you can play with it, even though it does not make lots of sense for now, but yeah.
Or is that something that you plan in the future?
Yeah, that's definitely something we'd like to bring into the future. It's not working for now. Well, I mean, one of the things that we intend to bring, like probably 2020 or something, is going to be private stuff regarding the files. Basically, it's like encryption, you know, and so integrate with, there are already Git remote helpers to encrypt files and store encrypted version of your stuff. So basically, this is kind of easy to plug. For the governance level, of course, it's on the Ethereum blockchain, so privacy there is way more complicated to achieve for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's kind of on the roadmap. Not the most needed feature, you know, but at some point, yes.
Hi, great talk. What kind of limits does Aragon put on how the DAO works? Like, do you have to pay out tokens in their token?
What kind of, I'm not sure it was, what kind of limits, like, do you need to use a token or stuff like that?
So, what limits does Aragon place on the DAO? Like, do you have to pay out like rewards in their token, or what's?
No.
Just build
Talking under control there. No, there are no. Aragon is an open source framework, so you can basically, you don't need to use any kind of, there is an Aragon token, which is used for governance of the whole project for now. So there is a token, but you don't need to use that token to use actually Aragon DAOs or to deploy Aragon DAOs or to use Aragon application. So it's token free somehow. So you're not tied to the Aragon token in any way. So no, you can use it without relying on the token. Basically, the token is going to be is used already for governance purposes. It's like a governance token. It's also going to be used in the upcoming court feature. Basically, you're going to be able to have a decentralized court between DAOs to settle on agreements. And if these agreements are broken, then you can have some kind of an on-chain trial. And that's one of the use case the token is going to be used for. But if you don't want to enter this court process or this court feature, if you don't want to access this feature, you don't need ANT token. So, no.
Great talk. For each contribution, you need to, for each commit or each push, you need to pay for a, do you hear me?
Yeah, I do. I don't know for the rest.
For each push, you need to pay a fee because it's stored in the blockchain. So the question is, each pull request, if you have to pay like 20 cents of euro, right now, maybe in the future it is going to be different and the price goes. But do you plan any way to fix that? Or I know that it's not a specific problem of Pando, but yeah. I think that it's something that you are going to see in front of.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you said, it's like a generic problem of blockchain projects. To be honest, we don't intend to develop our own solution to that problem. But Aragon, as a whole, the Aragon project is something which they are already working on. For instance, to make votes free, kind of. I think Kerge is going to talk about that tomorrow, or something like have a like layer 2 relaying system to make votes free. So I think what we intend to do is work with all Aragon teams to provide Aragon-wide solution to this fee issue and to make some actions free through some system. It can be meta transactions, it can be level 2, layer 2 relaying stuff. So that's something we'd like to contribute working on in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I was going to ask a similar question, just in terms of what stuff happens on IPFS and what stuff happens on Ethereum in your current architecture.
Yeah, so the thing is that it's really not that expensive. I mean, of course, you have to pay a fee for each pull request, and it's kind of a problem somehow. I agree with that, but I mean, it's an Ethereum-wide problem. But it's not that expensive because actually the only thing you need to store on chain is the hash of the head of your branch. So if you have 3 branches, you have 3 hashes, 3 strings basically to store somewhere. So then if it goes through a vote, then you have fees for the vote, but every vote pays for this fee. Once voting can be kind of free thanks to relayer architecture, then we can kind of solve this problem. And then you also have this minting, token minting process once your pull request is merged. So you have this whole process which uses fee, but the Pando specific stuff is just storing your hash on the blockchain, so it's really cheap. It's as cheap as possible, actually. Thanks, everyone. No, there was a question. No?
No, because it was a live, it was a recording. You need to talk in
the I might have missed this at the very end, but you mentioned you want, like, long-term, you want to decentralize Git. Could you go a little bit more into that and why?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the why, and maybe I'm going to end up with the how. The why basically is that, well, the most important problem, some are technical, it's really not that important, but for instance, Git rely on SHA-1 algorithm to identify its objects. So if you want to make on-chain verification of history checking, for instance, I push a commit, I just want to make sure that the parent commit is still in the dependency tree. If other, and like HICAC 246 primitives were used, then we could kind of check this stuff on chain, because we don't have to, it's just, you know, gas, not that expensive operation. With SHA-1 we can't, basically, so it's like one problem. But the most important problem is about like the workflow basically. Git has been entirely built around this idea that there are people maintaining a project and being in charge of the project, and they own push rights over the repo or not. And everything is thought and organized around that, which you can always find a way to circumvent, and pull requests and merge requests and stuff like that are just a way to make it work, even though it's not really integrated in the Git layer, you know. But at its core, it's not meant to be a decentralized workflow, not from an architectural perspective, but from like a workflow perspective or a collaboration perspective. Then how do we achieve a better decentralization stuff? First of all, by kind of ditching the idea of a maintainer and making, okay, it's a decentralized process. And depending on what are the technical solution you use, if you run it on the Ethereum blockchain or on its own parachain somehow or stuff like that, then you can envisage different solutions. For instance, you can say, oh, okay, actually any kind of branch becomes, any kind of version becomes a branch of its own, and it's only when you have more and more, like you can turn it into a blockchain of commits, you know, and like transaction become commits, and the branch which become like the master branch is the one which has the most commit pointed back to it, basically. So you can think about really different workflows which are not the Git ones, depending on how you want to achieve it technically and where the whole Ethereum ecosystem and blockchain ecosystem is heading to right now. So it's like a long-term consideration. But I think, for instance, the idea of saying, okay, let's think about it as a chain of commits and let's make the consensus system work out of that, then a different repo just become a blockchain fork, you know, somehow. So you can think about stuff like that, which I think can be pretty cool, but it's like a long-term goal. And also on the CLI part of what we've been working on, there was stuff like trying to make the use of Git or this VCS as easier as possible, because Git has some design flaws. It's like really hard to use when you are not used to it, and it takes a long time to actually learn how to use it. So you can really enhance the design of Git kind of easily. And also there are some stuff which are super, I don't know if you know PWOOL or stuff like that, but patch-based VCS, which basically rely on other data structure which kind of solve the problem of merging conflicts. So there are lots of, let's say, clues or ways we can go to try to improve Git in a way which way will make it way more Web3 friendly somehow. Okay, thanks.